Greetings, YouTube and fellow traditionalist Catholics. This is Sergio Becerra II, and welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be continuing with our history with the Dark Ages of the Papacy and some of the bad popes. In our last video, we ended with the reign of Pope John the 11th, the illegitimate son of Pope Sergius III. Before we even get into the next part of the book, which would be Pope John the 12th, one of the many worst popes, and of course a member of the Counts of Tuscany. I mean, not Tuscany, Tusculum. Before we start reading, I forgot to say at the end of the last video that I was thinking of doing a writing project concerning some of the bad popes. Not a history book, but I hate to admit it. Thinking of doing like a ghost story because the papacy has had a dark history of some really bad popes. I'm not trying to blaspheme or anything else towards the church. Well, like I said, not blaspheme or see anything that's heretical, nothing like that. The fact that the church, as I said, has had a history of bad popes, didn't go by what the Bible says or by church law and canon laws, etc. I mean, I am all well, even though I'm doing history here with you all, but I've also written some horror novels myself, and I'm a huge fan of horror novels, especially with ghost novels. So I think I'm doing a ghost novel. It has to do with the Pope. I mean, with the papacy's dark history, but it's set in current era times, like here in the 21st century. I mean, if you don't like that idea, I understand, but well, it's my decision, but I have not even drawn up the idea still. So, excuse me. So here we are, a dark history, the popes. Here we are. We're still finishing up with chapter 1 because we're all right now with some popes that are known to be bad. Here we are now with Pope John the 12th, son of the noble Lord Alberic. So here we are. So I'm going to read this sentence in bold print. The elaborate interior of the Church of St. John Lateran, the Cathedral of the Diocese of Rome, and the principal Basilica of the Vatican. The ceremonial chair of the popes can be seen at the center. So here's the inside of the Church of St. John Lateran, which is the Diocese of Rome, as it says here, and the principal Basilica of the Vatican. Principal Basilica of the Vatican. So this church has to do with the Vatican. And there's the chair. Here's a picture of it. And you can see the chair. It's right there. Now, let's dwell in to the history of Pope John the 12th. One of the many worst popes in history. So let's get into it. Pope John the 12th was so thoroughly dissolute. It was rumored that prayers were offered up in monasteries, begging God to grant him a speedy death. There seemed to be no sin that John the 12th did not, or would not, commit. He ran a brothel at the church of St. John Lateran, where he put one of his own lovers, Marcia, in charge. He slept with his father's mistresses. He slept with his father's mistress and his own mother. Wow. Well, history did state that John the 12th did commit incest with both of his sisters. Did not expect to read here that also his mother. So, yeah, John the 12th was really immoral. But it wasn't just committing incest with his own sisters, even committing a familiar sex crime, which starts with the letter R, which we all know what that is. Yeah, not only R murdered both his sisters, even though committing incest with them, but also his own nieces. But now his mother? He must have enjoyed incest a lot. I mean, what history does state that he was like the master of immorality, uh, just pro sin completely. But things do get dark with him. So here we go. He took golden chalices from St. Peter's Church to reward his lovers after nights of passion. He blinded one cardinal and castrated another, causing his death. Pilgrims who came to Rome risked losing the offering they made to the church when the Pope purloined them to use in gambling sessions. At these sessions, John the XII used to call on pagan gods and goddesses to grant him luck with throws of the dice. That's true. He would mention like the old gods of the Romans and the Greeks used to worship, like Zeus, well Jupiter, both the same thing like what the Romans um, believed in. Jupiter, Venus, Mars. Even though those are the same names of the planets, but those were the gods that the Romans believed in. So when he would play dice, he would evoke the names of the gods that the Romans used to worship and pray to grant him luck with throws of the dice. Women were warned to keep sorry, women were warned to keep away from St. John Lateran or anywhere else the Pope might be. But he was always on the prowl, looking for new conquests. Before long, the Pope of Rome were so enraged at John's behavior, he began to fear for his life. His response was to rifle St. Peter's Church for valuable and flee to Tivoli, some 27 kilometers, 16 miles from Rome. So, yeah, John really lived a life of being bad behavior. Now, if you saw right at the end of the last video with John the 11th, oh god, I can't believe I'm right beginning now. Well, oh yeah, now I remember. Even though the son of Alberic, John the 12th claimed not only not only was he Pope, but also the Prince of Rome. So, but his birth name was Octavian, the same name as the first Roman Emperor Augustus Caesar, but at birth he was known as Octavian of the Julii, the great nephew of Julius Caesar. I'm going to read this sentence in bold print. John the 12th, a thoroughly dissolute pontiff who ran a brothel at the Church of St. John Lateran, is shown crowning the Holy Roman Emperor Otto the First in 962. Yeah, later on, John the 12th crowns Holy Roman Emperor Otto the First of Germany as by means to secure well to get security personally for himself from any enemies John the 12th had. This was a deal so he can get protection. So here is a picture of John the 12th, and right here with Otto the First, who was having his coronation at the same church, St. John Lateran, right there. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. John the Twelfth was John the Twelfth was doing so much damage to the papacy, which was still reeling from the crimes and sins of his predecessors, that a special synod was called to deal with him. All the Italian bishops and 16 cardinals and other clergy some from Germany convened to decide what to do with the ghastly young man who was their pontiff. They called witnesses and heard evidence under oath and finally decided on a list that added even more misdeeds to John's already appalling record. Some of these were outlined in a letter written to John by the Holy Roman Emperor Otto I of Saxony. Well, Saxony is a German state, and of course Otto I was from Germany because most of the Holy Roman emperors were German, even though the very first Charlemagne was at the time king of the Franks, so early modern France to be exact, because some of Charlemagne's descendants were also of the Frankish kingdom. I'm going to read this one sentence right here in italics. Everyone, clergy as well as laity, accuse you, holiness, of homicide, perjury, sacrilege, incest with your relatives, including two of your sisters, and with having, like a pagan, invoked Jupiter, Venus, and other demons. So these are the words of the Holy. So I don't know if these are the words of the Holy Roman Emperor or some of the clergy that are accusing John of these crimes. Well, I'm reading here in this form in italics. I'm not sure if these are the words of the emperor or some of the cardinals or others. If you can see closely, like in the, hang on, my index finger is where it's tapping. These are the words. So I don't know who's quoting it. I don't know if it's the emperor or some of the clergy, but it is true. Another thing that was also rumored that John the 12th may have participated in pagan-like rituals, summoning pagan gods and demons inside St. Peter's. It's inside St. Peter's itself. Um, those were some rumors. I think I found online on YouTube, but it is said that John the 12th participated in these dark rituals that were blasphemous against the church. But it is true with all these other crimes that he's been accused of, invoking the Roman gods, perjury, lying, of course, homicide, that would be murder, incest, of course, because there's proof. Okay, so here we go. Pope John, still in exile at Tivoli, replied to Otto in terms so malevolent that fear permitted Rome. Okay, so that quote that I just read in italics, okay, so those are the words of the emperor. Okay, because John's given a response. If the Synod deposed him, John threatened he would excommunicate everyone involved, making it impossible for them to celebrate Mass or conduct ordinations. In Christian terms, this was the worst possible penalty a pope could impose, for excommunication meant being thrown out of the church, losing its protection, and even endangering the immortal soul. The immortal soul. So, what John the 12th is saying, you depose me from power, which I was put there from the beginning. I'm going to excommunicate you. So he's already threatened the clergy with excommunication, no doubt, and therefore the emperor as well. So he's letting everyone know, you throw me out. If you make any attempt to throw me out, I will excommunicate you. I'm sending you directly to hell. So here we go. John the 12th's revenge, where it says here. In spite of the threatened excommunication, the emperor Otto deposed John, and a new pope, Leo VIII, was put in his place. John, of course, would have none of this. When he eventually returned to Rome in 963, his revenge was infinitely worse than he had threatened. Okay, John's been deposed. Leo the Eighth has been put in place. So yeah, so looks like it. So the emperor didn't carry out his promise. Get rid of John. Get rid of John the 12th. Put in Leo the Eighth. So there. So now John is already now making his revenge, getting the throne back. He threw out Pope Leo, but instead of excommunication, he executed or maimed everyone who sat in judgment on him at the synod. Okay, so instead of excommunicating, he took things a step further, executing and maimed anyone. So he was already now on a killing rampage. This is no doubt this is a pope that's already burning in hell as we speak already for his sins and his crimes that he had committed. There's a lot more. I know there's another. I have another history book that I might get into later. Get into one day that talks about all the popes, so going all the way back from Saint Peter all the way up now with Francis. So, so those that sat in judgment to get rid of him, oh, they met their fate. So let me read this again. He threw out Leo, so therefore he got rid of Leo, tossing him off the throne, and then killed the people that were involved in the synod. He executed or maimed everyone who sat in judgment on him at the synod. John had the skin flayed off one bishop, cut off the nose and 2 fingers of a cardinal, and gouged out his tongue, and decapitated 63 members of the clergy and nobility in Rome. Wow. The word flayed off, well, the word flayed means you were skinned alive. So he killed a number. So he killed and flayed one bishop, ripped his skin off alive. And you figure that had to be really painful. Just hearing the word flayed is already making me feel that pain literally right now. And let's see what else. Cut off the nose, 2 fingers of a cardinal, and gouged out his tongue, and decapitated 63 members. Decapitated. Okay, so it looks like 63 members of the clergy might have had their heads cut off for going against John in the synod to get rid of him. Yeah, but he did worse to I believe, did worse to a cardinal. Cut off the nose and 2 fingers and cut off the tongue of a cardinal. Yeah, really gruesome. Then, on the night of 14 May 964 CE, it seemed that all those prayers begging God to intervene and save Rome from its demon pope had at last reached their divine distinction as a bishop named John Crescentius of Proteus later described it. While having illicit and filthy relations with a Roman matron, Pope John was surprised in the act of sin by the matron's angry husband, who, in just wrath, smashed his skull with a hammer and thus liberated his evil soul into the grasp of Satan. So, this is where we meet John's end. Because let's see, John was made pope at age 16, but he dies at age 27. Now, it is said that he was caught in bed with a random woman, a mistress, and the husband of that mistress had his head smashed in with a hammer. There is a picture of that you can look up online. Just look up John the 12th, and you'll find like um, black and white photo of John hanging out of a window, and you got the angry husband like smashing his head in with a hammer, and you got a naked mistress right there in fear. So yeah, have okay. So let me read this one more time. Crescentius of Proteus later described it while having illicit and filthy relations with a Roman matron. Pope John was surprised in the act of sin by the matron's angry husband. I don't know what the word matron means exactly. Okay, so it was surprised in the act of sin by the matron's angry husband, who, in just wrath, smashed his skull with a hammer and thus liberated his evil soul into the grasp of Satan. Let me look up that word, matron. Let's see what that means. I'm pretty sure it has to do with the mistress that Pope John was having an affair with. Okay. A married woman or a widow, especially a mother of dignity, matured age, and established social position. Okay, matron. Married woman. Okay, got it. Because all we know is the fact that John was fooling around with a married woman. Her husband walks in, catches them in the act in bed. John is done away with. In fact, Otto Otto the First, the Holy Roman Emperor, was planning to march back into Rome and have him deposed from power after what he had done to claim power again, getting rid of Leo the Eighth. Well, here's a picture of Pope Leo the Eighth right here. Pope Leo the Eighth, who Otto put on the throne by getting rid of John in the first place, and then John coming back and taking back the throne. So, let me repeat again. John reclaims the throne, does some horrible things to the clergy after they tried to get rid of him. And now Otto the First of Germany hears of this, marches back into Rome with an army to depose him. But John ends up getting killed himself by an angry husband who he catches him in bed with his wife. So no doubt the emperor knew about this and turned back. So there you have it. I think so far between Sergius III and John the 12th, well, even though they came from the same family, but were one of the top bad popes in history. Even though before that you had Formosus and then Stephen the Sixth, because they had because they were known to be bad too. I mean, Formosus had perjury and other accusations against church law, but then Stephen the Sixth, he just went flat out crazy by having his body put on display. Okay, here we go. Death comes to Morazia. Okay, here we go. Morazia, Sergius III's mistress. Let's see. But the church was not yet finished with the family of harlots who had spawned 9 of the most sinful popes, ever to defile the name of the papacy. In 986 CE, 22 years after the dramatic death of John the XII, Bishop All Crescentius came to the Castel Sant'Angelo to see John's mother, Morazia, okay, who was now 96 years old. Morazia's once ravishing beauty had crumbled into a bag of bones. Okay, yeah, Morazia was put in the Castel Sant'Angelo after trying to have every ounce of power she can by putting one pope after another until her son finally reached the throne. Then he dies later on. Well, first he was imprisoned and later released, but um, his brother Alberic seized control of Rome, stripped most of his power, can only do the sacraments, and then dies 4 years later. Okay, Morazia, the mistress of Sergius III and mother of John XII. She's in the Castel Sant'Angelo, 96 years old, which says here. Morazia's once ravishing beauty had crumbled into a bag of bones, her shriveled flesh clothed in rags. The recently elected Pope John the 15th had decided to take mercy on her. Okay, so later on we see that Pope John the 15th, the show has this. So we see here that Pope John the 15th later on in life grants her mercy, gives her mercy, sparing her. Okay, to take mercy on her, though his mercy took a form that only the medieval mind would have recognized. Crescentius laid several charges against Morazia, including her conspiracy against the rights of the papacy, her illicit involvement with Pope Sergius III, her immoral life, and her plot to take over the world. Yeah, well, Morazia had control of the papacy for like many years until her son reached the throne of Peter. But she, yeah, I guess she was nothing more than a harlot, nothing more than a woman with beauty and uncontrollable lust, just for power and having a couple of marriages that weren't going down well, even with her son, Pope John the 11th, now on the chair of Peter. And here she is now in her late 90s. And now you got a bishop that was that wanted to put charges of who wanted to place charges against Morazia for conspiracy against the rights of the papacy. Yeah, so Morazia was right now in her 90s, now facing charges of conspiracy for uh, having control over the church and all, and of course her involvement with Pope Sergius III, having a relationship at 15 years old with a man in his 30s, her immoral life and her plot to take over the world. Morazia was also compared to Jezebel, the arch villainess of the Bible, who also dared to take a third husband. The belief that human wickedness could be caused by demonic possession was common in the early Middle Ages, so just in case Morazia's demons were still present, she was exorcised. Now absolved from her sins and made fit to face her Maker, she died quickly after that. An executor slipped into her cell and smothered her with a pillow for the well-being it was for the well-being it was said of Holy Mother Church and the peace of the Roman people. Morazia is now dead, smothered in her smothered smothered with a pillow by an executioner. So an executioner just put a pillow over her face and just drowned her, suffocating her. A woman at 96 years old who had so much power, made a noble woman, well, born of nobility, but made mistress to a pope, had an illegitimate son with that same pope, and then later became pope, and the list goes on because we're just seeing one bad pope after another that was installed by this woman, and then of course her own mother, Theodora. So here we go. However, the end of the pornocracy However, the end of the pornocracy and the rule of the harlots was not the end of papal debauchery or the influential families who leached off of it. The papacy had a very long way to go before it finally shed its notorious image as a tool of power brokers and parvenists who fronted vested interests, whether royal, noble, political, or commercial. In fact, it took another 1,000 years until the 19th century for the papacy to become the spiritual influence it was always meant to be, and the Vicars of Christ no longer ranked high on the list of history's greatest villains. So it took a millennium to get the church right back in place. So from the 10th century on to the 20th century, 10, 10 centuries, a millennium for the papacy to become a spiritual influence, as it was meant to be from the very beginning with St. Peter as Pope. So let me read this again. In fact, it took another 1,000 years until the 19th century for the papacy to become the spiritual influence it was always meant to be, and the Vicars of Christ no longer ranked high on the list of history's greatest villains. Well, let's get one thing straight here. We've had popes over the centuries that came from powerful, noble Roman families. In fact, before anti-Pope Francis illegitimately took the throne of Peter, nine, 87% of all the popes that had sat on the chair of Peter were all Italian, and a lot of them came from powerful Roman families. Even though there have been other popes that came from other countries too. I did mention Pope Alexander VI. Both he and his uncle were from Spain, but found ways to make their families powerful. You got other noble families too that also were also powerful: the Medici, the Orsini, the Colonnas, uh, many other. Yeah, the Medici, the Orsini, the Colonnas, the Gitanis. Um, I know there was one cardinal from the House of Sforza, but not one of them, not one made it to the papacy ever. The Della Roveries also that I also mentioned from the very beginning, such as Sixtus the Fourth, and then later with Julius the Second. So there you have it. That's the end of chapter 1. With it ends there with John the 12th. Now later on, well, I did mention in the last video with Sergius the Third that I did mention that there was like one long paragraph talking about Pope Benedict the Ninth that I did mention earlier because he was like the last of the Tusculan popes that ruled the church, and he was just worse than John the 12th. Um, there's a lot you can research on because murder, bestiality, also accusations of being a sodomite, um, serving 3 different terms as pope, fighting for the papal throne, even though he was not really a member of the clergy. His father, um, well, he was the one that orchestrated for his election after the death of Benedict's immediate uh, predecessor. That would be his uncle, Pope John the 19th. Well, Benedict the Ninth had 2 uncles that had succeeded to the papacy. That would be Benedict the Eighth and John the 19th. But Benedict the Ninth will be last of the Tusculan popes. There's a lot to about Pope Benedict the Ninth that you would find very disturbing as well. I thought for a long time that John the 12th was the worst pope than his later descendant, but Benedict proved to be worse than otherwise. And I think Alexander the Sixth and Benedict the Ninth kind of like tie for first, in my opinion, being one of the worst popes. Okay, so that clears it up. So tell me what you think in the comments below. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and tell me what you think. And I'll see you in the next video. And let's see what we take off from there. All right, that takes care of that. Take care now. Bye.